At the midterm election, which saw a record turnout for a midterm, by the way, Vermont voters made some changes to the power dynamic at the Vermont State House, giving Democrats even more control of the incoming House and the Senate. They did this on the same night Vermonters gave the Republican governor, who runs statewide, of course, a landslide re-election victory. While top Democrats were certainly cheering their veto-proof majorities for the next couple of years, Republican Party leaders were left to wonder what happened, how they could try so hard and still lose ground. It is not yet clear if Democrats will try now to steamroll Governor Scott or find compromise. Last weekend, Senate Democrats chose Phil Baruth to be the Senate President pro tem. The Chittenden County Senator will be the chamber's most powerful voice, and he's with us this morning. Phil Baruth, State Senator from Chittenden County and soon to be President pro tem of the Senate. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. You are going to have 22 Democrats, 23 if you count progressives, right?
Oh, yeah.
And given that, what's your job going to be?
It's always herding cats. These are some particularly amazing and I would say talented and experienced cats that we've got coming in. 10 new senators, and the 20 who are coming back are all extremely experienced. So good balance of institutional memory and new energy coming in.
Well, that's one way to spin it. Some are concerned about the loss of institutional knowledge across the building. Mm-hmm. I gather there are about 60 new lawmakers in the incoming legislature. So does that make it harder for you? And tell us, the pro tem really is the gatekeeper in the Senate.
It does make it harder. I came in 2011, and we had a new pro tem, new lieutenant governor, a number of new senators, and we made mistakes. And I hope I've learned from that. So I actually think that's one of the reasons why my caucus nominated me. I happen to be the person with the most experience who was interested in the job. So it is going to be about protecting the institution, number one, in a time of threat to democracy. And then number two, making sure everybody understands the procedures, and those sometimes save you. You know, just following the way things have been done, not always a bad thing when you've got a lot of new people in the building.
Did you look at Becca Balint, your predecessor as pro tem, knew she was running for Congress, and say some months ago, hey, I'd like to step up?
Actually, Becca and I never had that conversation. She was really engaged elsewhere.
Sure, but did you say that to yourself?
I said it to myself when we hit about April in the legislature, and I looked around and realized, okay, of the 20 who are coming back, there are people who are ensconced in their chairs. They're not going to be interested. The other people who were interested were very talented folks, but on the younger side. And I thought it might be my moment, and went out and talked to people, and it turned out that way. First time it's turned out that way. I've put my name out there before, but I think it really is about chance and opportunity, and there it was.
I want to ask you about Phil Scott's view of the election and what Vermont voters were saying.
Yeah.
Vermonters spoke loudly and clearly. They want their leaders to focus on the economy, affordability, and protecting the vulnerable. They want centrist moderation and balance. They don't expect me to rubber stamp the legislature's initiatives. Just like they don't want the legislature to blindly go along with everything that we put forward. They want a steady, balanced government with less partisanship.
He sees this as a call for centrist, moderate governance from Montpelier. How do you see it?
I don't know if I would go that far. I don't think you can read, specific ideology into a general election vote. What I will say is Phil Scott is very popular. People look to him to protect, I think, number one, their wallet. and he's made affordability his #1 issue ever since he got in the State House. But there's a reason why they elected very strong majorities of Democrats and progressives in the House and Senate. We have policy proposals that we've developed over the years. Not a lot of policy comes out of the Republican Party anymore, and that's a sad thing. So when people are looking for a solution to their problem, they come to Democrats, and then I think they want Phil Scott to ride herd a little bit and make sure that we don't go off half-cocked, that we do our work, that we're careful, and that we look out for balancing the budget as well.
Well, the House Speaker, to some jubilation on election night, told the crowd of Democrats that you will have veto-proof majorities, comfortable majorities, in both the House and the Senate. Can we anticipate a lot of veto overrides?
The word I would dispute is comfortable. A veto override is never comfortable, and suspending the rules, which you need to do a lot of times in order to pass things in the end game, that's never a comfortable vote either. So if you take the Senate, we have 23 votes if every single person agrees to vote yes. We're a big family, but we have a lot of different constituencies, a lot of different ideologies within the Democratic tent. So it's not comfortable, but we do have the ability if everybody pulls together.
And you're fine with that, with trying?
Absolutely. You know, I just want to point out one thing, if I could. Last session, Phil Scott vetoed a pension deal that had been worked out by all the stakeholders, and he was overridden unanimously. There was not one Republican that voted to support his override. So I think we have to watch out and make sure we're humble. I think the governor also has to be careful of overreach.
He vetoed a climate change bill as well and was sustained by, I think, one vote. So I'm wondering if that is perhaps one of the first things we'll see from the Democrats pushing forward a climate change initiative, the thermal heat standard.
Yeah, the clean heat standard is definitely coming back. And the reason for this is we passed the Global Warming Solutions Act, which, among other things, makes the state liable in court if we don't hit certain targets. So the clean heat standard that we passed last session was designed to help us meet those targets and avoid being sued successfully. So we're going to have to come back with major climate legislation. We're going to work with the governor and we're going to work with his team. But in the event that he's not willing to sign it, I believe there are the votes now there to pass that.
Do you have the votes to pass paid family leave, universal child care?
Those things are under discussion. We don't really have a bill yet, so it's hard to say if the votes are there. I will say that Democrats and progressives are always concerned with, you know, the plight of families and trying to make sure that we get rid of the child care deserts, so-called, places in the state where you just can't get a slot for your kid. That can't happen in the 21st century, and we're out to fix that. And the question is, what will the bill look like? How much will it cost? And we'll go to our constituents with that equation.
Is this the year for new gun reform measures, despite the governor's objection?
I believe it is. If you remember back to Uvalde in Texas, you know, I became really active in the gun reform, gun safety debate with Sandy Hook. And what really struck me was not just children, but little children being slaughtered by someone with an assault rifle. And that activated me. Uvalde made me realize that in a lot of ways it's time for all of us to recommit to making our state a safe place from gun violence. Burlington has its issues now with gun violence in the form of shootings, you know, using pistols. But I'm still very concerned about semi-automatic weapons and their use against school children, against congregations in churches, et cetera.
Tell us a little bit about Phil Baruth. You aren't yet a household name in our state.
And never will be.
Well, interesting you say that. Previous pro tems have gone on to, let me think, become Congresswoman-elect, U.S. Senator-elect, governors of Vermont. Is that something to which you aspire?
No. I'm very, very happy to get this job. And I'm going to be doing this job and not thinking about anything else. What I will say about myself is I've been here since 1993, so I've been here about 30 years. I teach at UVM, and I work with a lot of young people there, and that was one of the big motivations to get into politics, was to try to make the state a more welcoming environment for recent graduates. So at that point, it was called the Lost Generation.
Right.
And I'm still very focused on that, trying to make sure that, you know, kids have childcare, education K through 12 is solid. We're shoring up our higher ed with more funding and the unification of the state college system. So I'm hopeful that that plus the governor's focus on workforce and housing will help us appeal to young people and convince them that Vermont is the place where they want to spend their lives.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
Phil Baruth, yeah, you'll have a big agenda, and we wish you luck, and thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Stuart. Appreciate it.
The new legislature will be sworn in the first week of January.